can have a voice, we all have a voice. But if that voice is not cultivated, and if you're not in a space where someone can hear you, you can have your voice and be standing in the forest and yelling, like the voice is there, but no one can hear you. But how can we take you into the space where your voice is heard, your opinion is valued, and then something is done about it? And so I think.
Everyone, hope you're doing well. Hope you're looking after yourselves. Welcome to another episode of the Student Guide. We are slowly approaching, don't ask me which number we're on. You know what? I don't know if we're on the last episode. If we are on the last episode, then I've clearly planned this perfectly. And if not, we're slowly approaching the end of season 7. As I mentioned in previous episodes, it's wild to believe that even this podcast is on season 7. And this is a special one because we're also recording in the birthday month of Pick Up the Mic. So it's March 2025, and we are celebrating 4 years of Pick Up the Mic. And this was the first podcast that came and it grew to be what Pick Up the Mic is today. But as you know, we bring amazing guest speakers and people onto this podcast to discuss their amazing work, whether they are tackling diversity, equity, and inclusion, whether they're promoting representation, whether they're discussing sustainability. And we have another amazing guest speaker here today. But as you know, I don't like doing introductions. I think we should hear from these amazing people directly. So I'm going to hand over to our guest speaker for today. Could we please know a bit more about you and what you do?
Yes, hello. So my name is Rehema Muthamia. Don't know if you want the full name or not. I am a consultant by profession, trade. I am a founder of Empower Essence, which is a company that helps women that have gone through domestic abuse or just some form of adversity really be empowered and step into their new light and new living. And I'm also a former Miss England, which always I like to add at the top like a cherry. So that's sort of how my platform came to be, and that's me in a short nutshell. I might rant, so I like to keep it minimal.
Well, thank you very much. And it's great. We're going to learn about more about your journey in just a bit. But as our audience may know, we have a segment called 44 Questions where we get to hear, thanks to our sort of supporter of the podcast, the founder of 44 Words, Amanda. 44 words. I thought I got the business wrong because it's questions and words. But for 44 questions, Amanda picks a question that we ask our guest speaker as a way to get to know them a bit more in a non-traditional way. To think creatively about how essentially the work that they're doing, but also about their experience. So the question for you is, what's a saying or mantra that you live by?
Ooh. Oh, that's really good. I'd say one that I use quite regularly is what my granddad used to say. Okay. I didn't get to meet him, unfortunately, but I've heard this saying many a time in my life. He used to say, don't leave for tomorrow what you can do for today, which basically means just don't procrastinate. In a nutshell, he made it a lot more philosophical than I have. But I have found myself having a tendency to sort of leave things very last minute. But I like to have that in moments where I might be delaying things or pushing things off. It's just something I sort of put the forefront of my mind to go, you know what, rather than leave this for tomorrow, just get it done now. It's almost like Nike, just do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Just do it. Yeah. And I think it's helped me many a time, especially at university. Yeah, I probably should have used it more then. But definitely, don't leave for tomorrow what you can do today.
Okay, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Literally like we said, like there's a lot of times when you might overthink things and be like, oh, I can't do it because like I don't have headspace or like, but there is certain times when you might be like sending off an email or like you said, like even like if it's university, I might just be like, oh, I could just do like one paragraph of my essay today, or even like just find references for my essay. So tomorrow it's not, I need to find references and write it. It's like, cool, I've got the references. I can now write out what I was going to say. Exactly. But yeah, it's always these small things. And I've been saying it for ages. I actually do have the book with me. My bag is here, so I will do a bit of... They don't pay me to promote these books, by the way, so I don't want people thinking that getting sponsored. But yes, books about small habits. I have started this book. I've been going back to my reading journey, and I share useful books with you all the time. So yes, Atomic Habits, it's all about essentially like doing small things every day and how that can help you in the long term to like, basically, you'll see that if you do I think he says like 0.01% of something every day for a year, you'll then see like at the end of the year, like the big compound impact of that. And was saying that even if it's just like, you do something, like for example, he says like on the back here, like if you do 2 push-ups a day, it might not feel like a lot, but years later, I don't know, the results will come. And it's all about not necessarily looking for instant satisfaction, but like gradual growth. So yeah, that's my book recommendation.
Nice. I've definitely seen that before.
Yeah. But I've heard like a lot of people say like it's been really good, and like he does have like an app. I haven't checked it out, but he's got an app. He's got a website. He's got a blog. But even like his journey of like going. So he starts off his book with a very like. Well, it's not. It's a shocking because of what happened. But he talks about he was basically playing baseball, and then someone accidentally like let go of the bat, hit him in the head, and then he basically was injured. He had a concussion. He had to be induced in a coma for a bit. It was like really serious. And he had to like basically. So when he was woken up, he had like his eye here was all fractured. His eye almost was like falling out of its socket. I should have said like trigger warning, but he basically like all of this stuff was happening, and he basically starts off the book with this because he basically says, so his doctor was just like, okay, over time you're gonna have to relearn to do things, because he was just like, I still want to go back to baseball, still want to play, and he was just like, cool. It might just be like, the doctor was just like, for your physiotherapy, it might just be like, do a 5-minute walk if you can, and it might be like, do that once a day, then it might be like, do that every couple of hours, then it might be do it every hour. And then he was just like, even like going back to the gym and doing stuff like that. So eventually he got back to, I think it was maybe a year or 2 years after the incident, like he was back to playing baseball. Wow. And he talks about like that having an impact on his life, because now, then like he was able, when he was in college, like he was one of the, I think it's like the basketball it's like the presidential's pick of like basketball players in college, and it's like 35 individuals across America get picked and nominated, like can win this award. Okay. And he ended up winning, and he was saying like he never became a professional like baseball player. He never like went into being a baseballer. But he basically was just like, this shows that like if I was overthinking and it was just like, I need to be at my peak fitness that I was before the accident, like straight away, and I'm pushing my body so hard, he was just like, I probably would have either injured myself worse or I never would have been able to accomplish the things that I later on do. So that's why I really like the book. It's like a really interesting story of like, yes, everyone, and I think we have another podcast that talks about it, the Hustle Chronicles, check it out. But it's all about like this idea of like hustle culture, and everyone's saying like you need to like work 24/7, like wake up super early, go to bed super late. And like with that podcast specifically, like we say it's like an honest approach to entrepreneurship. That's not to say like, for example, like I don't stay up late editing, like literally like we were talking about before we were recording, like it's not like I don't stay up late editing videos or like trying to figure out stuff or fix audio, video issues and stuff like that. But it's important to also recognize that like that's not healthy. So like it's not a long-term habit that I want to keep doing. It's something that I want to like eventually like ease up on doing. And literally like what we said with this book, for me it might just be a case of, today when I start editing this episode, it might be, okay, I'm going to just put this all onto like my hard drive. So then tomorrow when I want to start editing it, I can then maybe like add all the like stuff in and then I can divide all the videos up. And then Sunday it might be, okay, cool, I'm going to run it through this software and then just slowly do it like that. Because then when you put this pressure of like, no, it has to be done by like, I have to finish the episode tomorrow, then you're just like, okay, the to-do list is just getting bigger and bigger and there's other stuff. So that's my book recommendation. I definitely recommend for people to read. But we're going to dive into the first question. You mentioned it in your intro, you have an incredible journey. You've combined STEM, pageantry, but also advocacy in such a powerful way. So what inspired the creation of Empower Essence? And how do you define empowerment for women today?
These are great questions. So I think the process of Empower Essence has been I wouldn't say, my journey's been sort of 4 years actively and publicly doing advocacy work. But I've always had this fire. I hate to use the word passion because that's on every CV. Or just like, I'm so passionate, but we've kind of lost the sense of what passion means. But I've just had this drive to always want to help others. And so going through my own difficult circumstances, it's publicly known, I went through a very public, what became public, abusive relationship earlier on in my 20s, towards the end now. And going through that experience, I found myself in a position where I could either sort of insulate and take on all the shame and sort of just repress it, and then live with this like horrible secret that I was carrying, whatever it is. But for me, I really found that, really what happened, it became public knowledge. It was all over the newspapers. And that gave me the opportunity, by that being so public, for me to go, right, I now have an option. The biggest fear that I had has actually come to pass. How do you now conquer your fear once you actually have to face it? And so for me, it was just sort of going head on and saying, right, it is what it is. What can I do next? And so that sort of started my journey in publicly talking about it in pageantry and in the press and basically wherever I could, just to share my story about how we all go through difficult circumstances. It may not be an abusive relationship, it could be issues at uni, bullying at school, problems with your manager at work, whatever it is. We all go through challenges. And so how can we take those challenges and make them into something positive? And so for me, this was a venture, honestly, in the last 6 months, where I sort of said, I really want to build a community, and it's still fleshing itself out. It's not 100% there, but it's a journey where I can say, okay, how can I channel all that I've learned to help other women feel empowered? And so the term empower essence, it felt like this thing that we all have inside of us that we may not know, that if we tap into it can really fuse and sort of ignite, if we call it, this level of empowerment. And so empowerment means to me just taking everything that you have, your experiences, your emotions, your skills, and using them all for a good and channeling it into something that you can make positive. And so empowerment means to me just feeling your best self despite what circumstances may be going on.
100%. Yeah. Thank you very much. And I think, as you said, that the passion thing, definitely. I reviewed sometimes CVs for jobs through my part-time role, sometimes for people who do work experience modules for us at Pick Up the Mic. So I definitely understand the passion thing.
Everyone.
But I think it's really incredible, like you said there, that of I think through your story, not necessarily understanding, but like you said, the worst case scenario happened, and then it sort of left you with that choice. And I think, for anyone watching, like you said, they might have their own experience in their personal life. It might be, if they're a business owner, they were desperately looking for this funding because they wanted to deliver this project, and they had all these people interested, and they didn't get the funding. It might even be like you said, like an employee. Like a disagreement with someone at work, you didn't want it to spiral to be something big. It's now big. The whole organization knows. How do you come into work and have this conversation? And yeah, I think like you said, it's just you can either sort of keep it in, internalize it, or you can sort of use it as a sort of tool to I guess like we said, empower yourself and empower others. And I think that's whether it's with guests from this podcast, any of the other podcasts we do, that's one of the things that's always really interesting to see through these conversations is everyone's got their own story. So the one that comes to mind of this is shout out to them, Annabelle and Alan, they're brothers and sisters, and they started this company called Melanin Gamers, and it's all about promoting diversity and equity and inclusion within the gaming industry. And their story just came from the fact that so Alan was playing Call of Duty online, and he was playing with these group of random people, and they were things were going well, they were winning, all good, and then as soon as they started losing, and it was a lot, that's when racial slurs and a lot of derogatory terms were being thrown around, being said, and he was just where did this come from? Because when we were winning, everyone was vibing, everyone was yeah, this is really great, but he was just no, out of the blue, it just turned left. And then they said, so he spoke to his sister about it, and they were talking about it. And literally, like we said, they could have just been this is what can we do? We're only 2 siblings, and this is a massive industry, this happens all the time. But they was no, we want to create safe spaces. We want to allow people to feel they can go to, they can play games and feel safe when they're playing it. And even I told them, that's one of the reasons why, when it comes to online games, usually I don't turn my mic on and I never do anything like that because I'm sure audience members, if you're a gamer, you may know or you know people who've experienced it. But the stories I've heard are wild. And yeah, usually when I do online gaming, I don't have a microphone, I don't use a camera because I'm I don't need that kind of aggression.
Okay.
But literally, like I was telling them when we did the podcast, like it's great to see, like because I didn't know about them before. I literally just found them on Instagram, and I didn't even know the story. But I told them that like you're doing incredible work, because for someone like me who's a gamer, to see that there's someone who's actually actively working to like create this safe space for me to feel that I can like join a game with random people and not be worried that like, oh hey, like if I put my mic on or if I'm talking and. Yeah, like it could. Yeah, but yeah, you'd be surprised. But yeah,
actually, nothing surprises me. Like, yeah.
But no, it's incredible. Like, even with that story and with yours, like it's incredible to see like that empowerment in that way. So thank you very much. We should come at least to our next question, which is, as you shared, like empowerment is. So your story specifically involves overcoming adversity and navigating essentially traditionally male-dominated fields. So what advice would you give to young women who are struggling with imposter syndrome or feeling underrepresented?
Oh my gosh, how much time do we have? I can be here for months. I think I had to face reality, and I think it's a difficulty because we live in at least you and I, we're in the UK. We are a minority in a Western society. So we are going to be the few and far between. So already it's a difficulty. I had a realization really, really early on. I think I was about 16, 17. I was doing some sort of work experience. And I'd gone to an all-girls school in secondary school, and so I was surrounded by like women that were all about empowerment. I think that's where it started, to be honest. It was all about girls, how we could do anything that we wanted to. No one cared. I grew up in Northwest London. Like, everyone was diverse. There was nothing, out of the ordinary. And then it felt like the moment I had a taste of the real world, that was the first time that I was almost like, okay, so the world sees me differently compared to what my community has instilled in me and what my experience has been so far. And I had that opportunity where I was like, I was talking to someone about what I wanted to do at uni, and maybe we'll touch on it at some point. And I wanted to be a pediatric neurosurgeon. That was my goal. I was reading all the papers, the books, like Ben Carson was my dream. And I mentioned to someone that was working at like a part-time job, and it was this Caucasian male that looked at me like, what? Like, how dare you? It was almost like, you have the audacity to want to do this. And it really shocked me because I was like, well, why can't I? And it was the first taste of me going, the world sees me differently. And then it's been many experiences from then. But the great thing that I had from that experience was that, again, it was about making a choice. I think life is all about choices anyway. I can either battle with what society is really viewing the narrative that they have as either a minority group or as a woman. And I'll talk about imposter syndrome very soon. Or I can go accept it for what it is. I can't get shocked. I find myself in spaces where I am the only black woman, many a time. And I use that to my advantage in whatever way that I can do. I don't allow it to be a negative. I see it instead as a positive. I can come and bring my own viewpoint. I can have my own experiences. But that doesn't mean that I don't face imposter syndrome in certain spaces. So, going back to the uni space, I didn't become a pediatric neurosurgeon. We haven't, because I would be telling everyone, Dr. Muthamia, doctor, please, address me correctly. But I went to university and I studied, I'm in the STEM field, and so I went and got into bachelor's and a master's in genetics. And again, I was the only black woman on my course.
Wow.
Really the only black person, actually, in my entire course. And so I found myself in academic spaces, but also professionally and just in society, where I am the only one. And again, earlier on, me having that experience gave me the tools to have the armor to say, okay, this is what I'm going to face. How can I deal with this in a way where it's not limiting, but again, I can use it to my advantage. Doesn't mean I didn't face imposter syndrome, even up until now. Still to this day, I have done incredible things in my life on paper when I see them, but there's still that feeling of, am I good enough? Should I be in these spaces? But the advice that I would give is, in terms of imposter syndrome at least, you wouldn't be in particular spaces if you weren't qualified to be there. And I think it takes, again, stepping outside of self and seeing it objectively. You know, if you were talking to a friend and your friend was telling you about the things that they're doing or the spaces that they've been in, what would you say to them? And it's something about removing yourself from your circumstance, the situation that makes you go, okay, I can see this differently. In terms of imposter syndrome, you're going to face it, but I think stepping out, seeing your skills for what they are, and really understanding that you wouldn't be there if you weren't capable or you weren't able. And then in terms of just being a minority, use that as your superpower. You know, don't see it as this horrible thing that, you know, I'm the only woman of color in my workplace or the only male of color at university, whatever your course. See it as I'm able to come into this space and I'm not saying necessarily educate, but come with a different perspective and a different viewpoint of life and use that to your advantage.
100%. Yeah, thank you very much. I think even just to add on to what you just said is like about like sort of like looking back on like with the imposter syndrome about like what you do. So I think one of the things that my I won't say her name, so if she does watch this, then she knows who she is. But like in my current role, and even arguably like the second manager I ever had, like she's still like a mentor, she's a family friend now, like we've developed that relationship. And both of them, funnily enough, they've only met once, but they both gave similar advice to me. And it was that, like, I guess like we said, like, my current manager, I'll give the context now and then the previous one. So my current manager was just like, oh, you know, in meetings, like, you're often, like, very quiet. And she was just like, I was just like, oh, well, you know, like, I don't really feel like there's stuff to, like, the stuff to share. Or if I do need to share it, like, I can just, like, email afterwards. I don't need to necessarily say it in front of everyone. And she was just like, no, like, she was just like, I'm going to be honest with you, and I don't want you to like be upset or think that I'm thinking you're doing a bad job. She was just like, no, I know who you are. I know that like what like the way you think and what you do. And she was just like, it's not like you've ever done anything wrong if you've got bad ideas. She was just like, feel free to like, if you completely disagree with something, like don't wait until afterwards and like talk to me about it. Like when we're in team meetings or like department meetings, like say it there, like say, oh, actually, you know, based on this, I don't necessarily agree on it. And she was just like, you're like, and like based on the work that I do, so myself and my manager deliver this program at Somerset House called the Black Business Residency. And with that, like, she was just like, you have been, like, when I started, I think she was just like, I'm not gonna push him because he's like still new and stuff like that. But like recently she was just like, okay, you've been here for like over a year and a half. Right. So you know the program, you delivered like 3 different groups of people who've been on the program. And she was also just like, bear in mind that like you get the program perspective, like you get the members' perspective because I'm a business founder. I'm also a black business founder. This is program specifically for black founders. So I know what, if I was a member, what I would be looking for and what I would need to support my business. And she was just like, you work in the same, basically in the same industry as them. You're still within the creative industries. You're still like a founder and an owner. So she was saying like, if we're proposing things that would, you know, either improve or worsen or like impact, or even if you've got a suggestion on like how the program could be developed, like she was saying like, don't like just wait until afterwards and email everyone. She said like, bring it to the table, like lead on stuff. And I think that's been really great to, like you said, like stepping out. And even like my first manager. So when we met, like when we did the interview, I maybe said the story before, but like when we did the interview, I didn't know this, but she said she'd had like a long day of interviews. She was just like, look, I don't know if I found the candidate. This is going to be like, let's just do this last one and see how things go. And then she said she knew instantly that like, there was something different about the way I approached the job, because she said like when I saw her, I don't remember doing this. I also say I smile a lot, but she basically was just like, oh yeah, you came over, like so when I came over to like pick you up from reception, you smiled, you shook my hand, and then she said like, if I could have just like, she said it was up to me, I would have just given you the job there and then. Because she was just like, oh, like I was just like, there was something different about you. And then she said when you were talking and like mentioning all the stuff that you do, she was just like literally. Like, and I'd never knew, like I was working at my university, but I never knew about the work that she did. So when I was giving all these ideas and stuff, she was just like, literally, this is stuff that we've done in the past. Like you're talking about work that we've covered and you've never even heard of us. And it was just so funny because that was also it was a placement role at uni. So that's why it was that quick. But that was the only job that like on the way home, I got called and was just like, oh, hey, we're offering you the job. And I was like, oh, wow, thank you. But yeah, literally like she said the same thing. So when I was employed by her, she was just like, look, I see the work that you do. She's just like, you've integrated yourself really well with the like ambassadors that we work with and like the team and all of this. But she was saying like, I want this year that you work with us to be a year that you can like come out and be like, you've done all these incredible stuff. Because she was just like, look, and like that's why we've even kept in touch to today. Because she was just like, I see your passion, I see the stuff that you do, and I know you're going to do big and great things. But she was just like, I want you to like remember that. And the biggest example I say before we go on to the next question is with, so a bit of context is, I did a speech for my graduation, and like I think my sister's getting tired of me like mentioning this, but I brag about it all the time. But I did a speech at my master's graduation 2 years ago, and so basically it all started from, I guess like, well, I'm Christian, so for me it's just like God's timing and God delivering this. People may say it's manifestation, but for me, so what happened was I was just like, oh, I'd love to do a graduation speech. And I was on the way back from uni and I was just like, let me just write out what I roughly think it would be. And then I think I WhatsApped her and I was just like, oh, like, I don't know if you know how the process is to do speeches at graduations, but like, I would love to do it at a graduation. I wasn't even thinking about my own. Okay. And she was just like, well, why don't you do it your own? Like, let's find out how it can be done. So she spoke to someone that she knew who like managed all of the like graduation stuff and the planning of it. And she said, actually, there's this really incredible opportunity that I think was the first time it ever happened. So she was just like, the new VC that we had, he was just like, we actually want students to, if they want to speak at the graduation, they can submit an idea. And if we feel like based on what their graduation speech is going to be about, they would be a good fit. Yeah, why not? They should be able to speak. So she was just like, yeah, there's this application, keep an eye out for it, apply as soon as you see it. So I did, I got it. And she was just like, okay, you're not going to tell anyone. I was just like, really? She was like, yeah, don't tell family. She was just like, don't tell friends, don't tell anyone. Because she was just like, your parents are going to be in the crowd. Like family and friends are going to be watching online. She was just like, we want this to be an opportunity for you to like showcase. Because she was just like, look, your family may see bits of what you do for Pick Up the Mic. But she was just like, especially for my parents, they don't necessarily. But she was like, they're going to be in the room. And this is going to be an opportunity for you to like showcase to them what you do. So it was tough. So like I didn't tell my family at all. I was like, yeah, we would like I was practicing with her after work. So people were just like, why are you coming back late? I was like, oh yeah, you know, like busy day at work, had loads to do. My dad even I had printed out my speech and I was like practicing in my room. My dad came in and was just like, oh, you need to start getting ready. We need to go. And I was like, I had to like chuck it away and like do all of this. But yeah, it was just funny. So I vaguely remember seeing this, but my sister, I think, had a rough idea because she was sitting next to my parents. And so I'd come up on stage, collected my certificate, came back down. And then they were just like, okay, cool, if you just walk around with us, you'll just be on the side. So my mum saw me going back on stage again. She was just like, what is he doing? Like, what's he doing? And then I was just like, if I look at her, I'm going to start laughing. But she was just, I saw her just looking at me. She was just like, what's but yeah, I then did the speech and I was talking about like, so it's on the back of the t-shirt and I'll put a picture of it, but we have this quote that is relevant to both me as an individual, but to me, I think it summarizes like what we do, Pick Up the Mic. And it's a Latin quote, which means Sig Parvis Magna, which is greatness from small beginnings. And the whole speech was about like, okay, you know, you might feel like you're in these small beginnings of whether you've just graduated or whether you don't know what you're going to do next. But I said, like, look, greatness is going to come from what you do. And it might be today, it might be tomorrow, 5 years, 10 years, but like, just keep doing what you're doing. Don't worry about like having everything sorted out. Just keep working and you'll see like great things come from it. And I think to me, it was really great because like for the most part, a lot of people didn't know that I was doing it. So it was really funny after, and like even in the speech, I even say like, oh, my parents, friends, family didn't know about this. I had to keep it as a secret. It's going to be great to talk to them afterwards. And yeah, it was just like super funny because, so my dad was wearing this, so I'm Yoruba, so we were wearing the same like traditional Yoruba clothing. Nice. So literally, as soon as I got off the stage, all these people, like all the parents nearby were just like, oh, that was your son that spoke. Yeah. And literally like, so it was funny because I think my parents were just like, look, what we'll do is we'll get some photos, we'll go speak to my old manager at the time, Leslie, shout out to you. Like they speak to her and then we go home. Basically, as soon as the graduation finished, the whole like time to go to our office, people got to coming up, other Nigerians, they were just like, look, it's great to see a Nigerian on the stage, represented. And I was just like, this is great. This is arguably what I wanted to showcase. And I think the reason why that story is like always like super impactful to me is because of that. Because like I said, my parents don't always like, and that's not because they don't support. It's more because like I can understand to them why a networking event for young people might not be relevant for them to come to. Or even like podcast episodes on stuff that isn't relevant to them, they might not necessarily want to watch. But I think for me it was like great because I was just like, this is an opportunity for them to sort of see the impact of what I do, see arguably my journey, because I've been at Brunel, I did like my undergrad, my master's, and 2 placements for both of those. So I was at Brunel for like 6 years.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, this is an opportunity for them to see like what the last 6 years has been.
Yeah.
And arguably my undergrad graduation was online as well. So I was also just like, I want this graduation to be like a pinnacle. So basically, like you've seen with imposter syndrome, like that was, to me, like that's a perfect example. And it's a reminder to me, and people might say it's like, I go back and watch it, because to me, it's like a reminder of, even if I feel like, oh, like, I'm not where I want to be, that's a reminder of like, no, like sometimes if you, I guess linking to the book, it's like small things and like putting yourself out there, because it wasn't like just me writing the speech or even like me putting in the application that enabled me to even get the opportunity. It was the stuff I was doing to pick up the mic, stuff I was doing with my course, the working with like my manager, Leslie. And through all of that like work together, that led to like this fruition of like a graduation speech. And I like tell people like, look, I did, like, if you told me when I started 2017 in Brunel, like I would be doing a speech 6 years later, I probably would have told you like, I don't see it. Like maybe like a small one at like an event, but I was like a graduation stage, like so I tell people like that to me is a reminder that like, just, you never know, like if you just put in an ask or like you just keep on showing up every day, you never know like what could happen.
No, 100%. That's a great story.
Oh, thank you.
Great story.
We're going to go on to the next question. We're going to start this one with our mic check, which is a fact or figure that's relevant to the conversation. And this one is all about a 2023 report by WISE, so Women in Science and Engineering. And it says that only 26% of the UK's core STEM workforce is female. And the number is even lower when it comes to Black and ethnic minority women. And this essentially highlights a need for better representation and support in this field. And, you know, shout out, because I haven't announced it yet, but I'm doing it here because it's relevant to the conversation. They've now become community partners, and I know that's where we met, through STEM and the work that they do. So shout out to Donna and Dr. Abigail. But yeah, essentially like representation is key to your work. It's a key theme to your work. And I know you also wanted to touch on like your university experience and like how that was. And I think it'd be really great to link that in as well. But why is representation important, especially for young people from minority backgrounds? But why is it important not only for representation, but for them to see diverse role models in leadership and professional spaces?
Oh, these are great questions. I think it's sometimes there's something about seeing yourself in spaces that you either want to get into or you know of, that builds a connection. You know, I think about a lot of the TV growing up. And this is nothing about what I do in life. Just when you see a lot of TV, I remember growing up, I didn't really see. I wanted to be a child actress at one point. Listen, I've gone through all kinds of things. If we're going to talk about things, my life is, should be a Netflix drama or something. But I remember thinking I didn't see very many, at least in the UK, like little black girls that loved musical theatre. I loved musical theatre. Hairspray was my thing. I was like, I don't see a young black girl other than one little girl who's in Hairspray, Inez, and I held on to her so much because I was like, oh, I see you look like me. You know, there's I don't know you as a character or a person, but when you see someone that looks like you, just the representation, there's a connection that makes you think, oh, I can get there too. And so whether that for me was musical theatre, TV, or that's in uni or at work or whatever space that you're in, seeing people that are just like you, it does something. It builds a connection and makes you think that it's not too far off in reach, because if they could get there, then why can't I? I think it's very important, whether that's in media, in tech, in STEM especially. Thinking for myself, my entire academic career, I had absolutely no one to look up to. I didn't see a Black woman in anything. I remember one topic we talked about was, I'm such a nerd. I don't know if you've heard of HeLa cells. So modern medicine is basically based off of one Black woman that had cancer, such a nerd, that had cancer, I think in the 1940s, early 20th century. And it was a very aggressive form of cancer. And the doctors took some of her cells when they took a tumor out. And essentially kept those in culture, which basically means they kept the cells and they grew it, and then they started doing testing without any of her knowledge. Nothing. And those cells were really the beginning of any modern medicine that we have currently is based off of her cells. So her name was Henrietta Lack, and the cells are called HeLa cells. But the only time I saw a Black woman in anything scientific was this woman, and she was being taken advantage of. And for me, I remember I was about 15 in my science class thinking, this is incredible. Why does no one know about this publicly? And also, how dare they? And why is it her being taken advantage of? And so for me, that was really it. And ever since then, I still haven't found myself unless I put myself in spaces. Shout out to System. Fabulous ladies that have done incredible things, where you're able to see other women that have similar interests as you, or background, or in similar fields, that you then can go, I can do that. And so maybe I've gone right off the topic. Representation. What was the second part?
No, that's all right. So you actually kind of answered it. So why is it important for, especially for young people, to see diverse role models in leadership and professional spaces? But also, I guess, like you said, like talking about your university experience, I guess you didn't see that. So why did that? I guess adding to that, it's like, why did that almost like motivate you to be your own role models, but also not only to yourself, but to inspire other people, like other Black women, or even women in general, to sort of like put themselves and see themselves in these professional and sort of like academic and leadership spaces?
I don't think I actively chose to do that. A lot of it was me, and I gave this talk recently about how it's that bystander effect of someone else needs to do it. If you see someone doing something wrong, someone else will deal with it. Or if there's a change that you want to see, someone else will figure it out. But then if we all say someone else will do it, when will it ever get done?
Exactly.
And so it was me finding myself in a leadership position, somehow by choice, by me winning a pageant, which has nothing to do with anything else, but really was the beginning for me to go, I'm now in a position where I have some form of influence, or there are particular people that are looking up to me because they say, hey, here is a Black woman that is in this particular position where we have never seen this before, or something we can aspire to. And being in that position really was like the driving force for me to go, okay, great, I've done this in pageantry. How else in other areas of my life where I feel that there is a lack and definitely a need, can I now be a quote-unquote leader? I hate to even call myself that because I think we're all leaders in our own like spheres of interest of life. How can I then use the experience that I've had and the representation that I wanted when I was younger, or even now as a grown woman, to be that face for other people? Oh, sorry, did you want to?
No, that's all right.
Is that my phone? Oh my gosh, it's my phone.
No, that's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm looking at you like I didn't see you. Doing stuff. So many alarms. But yeah, so how can I now be in that position? And I think it's powerful when other people are able to see you, again, not only in those spaces, but in those spaces and doing something about it. Because leadership is, you have the tools, or you have the platform, but you're also giving back to others. Being a leader is to service the community. It's not about self. It's about how can I tap into different areas where I can help other people, where I can build a community, where I can bring other people in. And so I think, whatever area of life anyone may be in, you can be your own leader, just by stepping up and saying something, or stepping up and being representative of the melanin gaming, you know what I mean? Seeing a need or a niche and doing something about it, I think is not only why leadership is important, but why leadership is just like an important tool to have.
No, definitely. And I think even like linked to what you're saying, like I even tell people, and he even like, I'm pretty sure he watches this. He's discussed it before. But the partner of the program that at Somerset House I'm part of, the BBR program, his name's Akil Benjamin. And like, even, so when I like applied for this role and got the role, I didn't know how the program started. I thought it was just like a partnership between the two. And it was, but he was saying, so like when he talks about it, he says that, you know, this was back in 2020. Again, we're looking at things like with Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, it was also COVID. And he was saying that like, so Somerset House, I didn't know this, but Somerset House at the time was one of the only places where you could actually still come in and work.
Oh, wow.
So like even this co-working space like was open and people could come in and like, there wasn't, again, it was COVID, so not a lot of people were coming in, but they like there were like a few people still here, and he was running a different business at the time called Mental Black Business, and it was like an online, almost like Saturday club that people could join and they'd get mentorship and stuff like that. And then he apparently bumped into the director, Somerset House, and they just met in a corridor and they started speaking, and he was just like, I think it'd be really great to have like a physical space to support Black-owned businesses and, you know, have a space where they can like come, they can work, they can develop and grow. So through sort of like working with him, this program, the Black Business Residency, came about. And it's now like a 12-month-long program. It's got a sponsor, and it now like supports Black-owned businesses that operate either directly in or their consumers are within the creative industries. And I think for me personally, like he probably doesn't know this, but like I've told him, well, I don't know if I've told him, but like his story of like how he even started this program, and I know for a lot of people who take part in the program, is quite inspirational, because it's like like Somerset House as an institution is quite big, it's quite well known, and to be able to like partner with them and deliver this, and arguably I didn't even know this until like later on. This isn't the only program like he's delivering. So even to see that he's like delivering all of these like support services, and he's very like he speaks to all of the businesses, he has one-to-ones with them, he still keeps in touch with them afterwards, like they might say, oh, I've got this event, or like, oh, you know, I'm actually looking for like a potential speaker for something, do you know of someone? So like he's still even like, and I think that's one of the things that sometimes, and like I know I've discussed like support services for young people in previous stuff, but I think for like specifically for his episode, like for the work that he does, I've told him like, you don't always see like people who support programs be like directly involved. And I said to be someone who's a partner of a program who directly like checks in with members, and even like, I guess the final thing I'll say about it is, even I've told him that I like when I come to work, usually I just put on my work hat. So I'm not thinking about pick up the mic. I'm not thinking in the same like, I guess, mindset of that, because like with pick up the mic, I decide where the ship goes. With work, I have to like, it's not, the end decision isn't with me. But like he's always just like, oh no, like he's asking me about my business. So so like a few weeks ago when I did the post about 4 years, I saw him, like he invited me to like come along to a meeting, and then before the meeting started, he was just like, oh yeah, so you celebrated like 4 years of Pick Up the Mic. How's it been? How's it going? What's happening this year? What's the plan? All of this. And then to me, I was just like, oh, that's really interesting. Like he's not asking me about like my part-time job. He's asking me about like that. Even like there was another time he was leading like a workshop, and I was like, cool, I'll come along. And then like it was still one that I was facilitating under my part-time role. And then he was just like, okay, Jeffrey, introduce yourself and like what you do. And then I was just like, do you want me to do it with my work hat on or like with my business hat on? And he was like, no, your business hat, obviously, like your work hat, like that like that's your 9 to 5. Like I want to know, like we want to know about you as an individual and as a founder. So even to me, it's like seeing even like the way he leads on like that, and like the involvement in the program, for me shows me like how as a founder, you need to be very focused on like community. And I know like with the stuff that we do Pick Up the Mic, we do like keep that community sense, and like you know, I mentioned it in an episode that either is going to come out or has just come out. I specifically say like I love introducing people to each other. So if someone says, even if someone doesn't say, like someone's got a podcast, I might be like, cool, so these 3 people have been on the podcast, let me know if you want to get in touch with them. Or sometimes people come up to me and they're just like, hey Jeffrey, I want to put on an event, I don't know the space, or I don't know like where I could do it and stuff like that. And I'm just like, actually, you know, like I've got like 3 different spaces that I've found that potentially like you might have to give them like a bit of a sort of like, you do this, I do that. But I said like, no, like I'm happy to do that and like intro you. Because I guess it's like what we were saying, like it's all about like that like direct level of community and allowing people to like grow and flourish together. And yeah, whether it's directly through my like through the partner of the program, even from like my colleagues that I work with at work, like that's what I've seen with like this, like the community that they manage is quite big. But again, like I said about that one-to-one approach, they're very much like open to one-to-one discussions and like support. And that's what I told them, like as someone who's been a part of different co-working spaces, been a part of different programs and stuff like that, like I've said, sometimes that can be missed. Or sometimes when you're working in an institution, like the people you directly work with, they're like big on your vision. They see the work that you do. They're very proud of you and they're like, yes, they'll champion you. Yeah. But then when you like go past that, it's like, no, people will be like, oh, you're like a young person doing a business. Oh, it's really great. Love what you do. But, you know, you're quite young. You haven't like got maybe the level of fame or acclaim as others have. But that's why to me, like, even like funny enough, like we did another recording earlier this week and like the person asked me like, oh, how do I find guests for the podcast? And I said, oh, well, you know, sometimes it's friends of friends, sometimes similar to it's like this, it's like through events. Yeah. But I said for the most part, like I'm always open to like anyone being on the podcast. It's just about figuring out like based on the podcast that we do, is there something that you talk like your experience or you could talk about that's relevant to it. But I've said like I'm not looking for like industry leads. Like we've had students on, we've had business owners on. Some of them are like small business owners, some of them are bigger business owners. But I've always told people like I'm never gonna, like the only reason I would say no to someone, and even the no wouldn't be like I'm not gonna support you. It'd be like, no, but here's options you could maybe explore. But it's literally just that. It's like, I feel like people should have the space to discuss stuff that they're passionate about, talk about topics that they're interested in, and it should never be like gatekeeped that like you need to have a certain level of fame, certain following, you need to have like only worked with like big organizations to be able to work with us or to partner with us or to be involved with us. I'm like, no, like if you're a small business owner and I don't know, you only have like, you do 2 events a year and you don't have like loads of followers, I'm like, cool, like let's see if we can work together and like I'll offer advice if you need it. But yeah, I'm always open to like that. And I feel like that's been like, yes, obviously like the big dream is to eventually pick up the mic so we can get profits to expand the work that we do. But I've always said like, I like doing stuff like this because it's great to see like where those connections and like that collaboration could go. Because I've seen people like through events we've done, like they've found their own podcast guests, they've found employment for like stuff. So yeah, to me, it's like those stories are what make the work that we do like they're essentially empowering you to do the work that we do. We've come to the last question before we go to passing the mic, where you'll be able to ask me a question. And it's basically about some of the organisations that you've worked with. So you've worked with organisations like the Home Office and UN Women UK. So, looking at institutions as a whole, what do you think institutions can do better to create inclusive and supportive environments for students and young professionals?
Ooh, wow, what a question. It's a great question, by the way. Really good. Never thought about this. I think, first of all, my opinion, I don't like to speak for any organization or anything, for myself, is just getting people involved, because you can only do so much if you don't have the voices that you're either trying to reach. Maybe some of these organizations aren't trying to reach voices, particular voices. But giving a space for, let's say, students, to have a say or be involved that can then make an impact. There's only so much that you can do. If you can have a voice, we all have a voice. But if that voice is not cultivated and if you're not in a space where someone can hear you, you can have your voice and be standing in the forest and yelling, like the voice is there, but no one can hear you. But how can we take you into the space where your voice is heard, your opinion is valued, and then something is done about it? And so I think, maybe not necessarily with the organizations that I've worked with, but just organizations in general, building out more for community spaces if that's what they want to do. Like, how can you reach out into the community more? If that's wanting to start a student initiative, going into universities, starting an organization, a society. There's another organization that I was involved with recently, and they start Girls Human Rights Hub, shout out. They have young women that are interested in men in girls' human rights, and they start societies at university because you value the voice of young girls. Like, how can we make the world more equal and have equity for young girls for the future? And so they go into, either you're interested or they partner basically with young women or young men that want to start a society, and then essentially you spread the message to your closer community, X, Y, and Z. And that grows from there. But I think it's about the initiative that organizations make initially to even have that as an opportunity or a program so that can build out. Now, not every organization wants to do that or think that that's important. But I think a lot of organizations are quite comfortable in either keeping things in their sphere, in their corporate work, or whatever spheres of influence that they think are important. But I think having a community influence and understanding and opportunity is really able to then widen out the reach that they have. So I think a really great way, and I think I love what Girls Human Rights are doing, is going into universities or having students come in that are interested to then increase the message that you're trying to get across. And hopefully program managers actually do that. It also takes you as an organization wanting to do that and having the capacity. But if you do have the capacity, then I think it's important to just have people's voices be involved. Because when you have different voices, you're then able to make a wider impact and then influence a wider group of people.
Definitely. Thank you very much. And I think even to to add on to what you just said, I think it's first off, like you said, the working collaboratively with people and organizations allowing this initiative, because so again, shout out to Leslie, and it's a shame because without going into too much detail, this program is no longer offered at Brunel, but she would do a summer school. So it was a girls' summer school. So she'd do two, to be fair. She'd do one specifically for I think it's year 12. I think it was year 12 students. So both boys and girls. And then there was one specifically focused for girls interested in STEM. And she did this really cool. So she talks about this as a pinnacle example of why this program exists. So she had a student who was a civil engineer. And she was just so the student was just was going to do a talk and talk about her experience as being a civil engineer. And now that she's working in a civil engineering company, talk about that. But she said, okay, I want you to come, how you dress to work. So if you want to come in a dress, you want to come makeup on, all this stuff. And she said, but I don't want you to say from the get-go that you're a civil engineer. And she said the reason why is because she said a lot of these young girls were thinking if I go into civil engineer, I'm basically going to essentially have to be a tomboy, no makeup, I'm going to be wearing a hard hat and a viz, a high viz, all the time and stuff like that. But she said, no, when she told the person who's delivering the workshop that, she said, all of them were just wow, she's so incredible and she looks amazing, she's doing all of this cool stuff. And then she maybe halfway through or third through was just oh yeah, I'm a civil engineer. So I studied at Brunel and did all this, and I'm now a civil engineer and I work in this company and then people were asking but how, do you dress like this to work? She's no, I don't always wear high heels and dresses. But she was just no, but I didn't have to lose a part of myself to work in this industry or feel if I did dress like this, I would be judged or people would say that I don't take work seriously. And to me personally, that's why that program existed and is really great. And she was saying even so she brings she gets different people involved and I always say thank you. She got my sisters who both studied biomed, but then went into two different areas of health involved. And she was saying no, even with your sisters, so one of my sisters, she works in the research aspects of things. So she works for a medical regulation company within the UK, and my other sister works within health and specifically works on policy for health. And she was saying no, what's really great is both of them do this, but then also outside they have stuff that they do. So one of my sisters, she runs she's developing this thing called the Mummy and Me app, and it's supposed to be an app that's supposed to address health disparities of essentially pregnant women in colour, but specifically towards black women, because black women are 4 times more likely to face maternal sort of mortality. But she was also saying, she also does sustainable fashion. She designs clothes, upcycles clothes, does all of that stuff. And essentially, my manager Leslie at the time wanted to showcase that no, the women in STEM, they don't have to lose their creativity or the fun aspect of what they do or who they are. It's not just bored. Even if you wherever you work. It's not like boardroom and like, you know, you have to join up with the boys and do all of that stuff. Like, she was like, no, like all these women that come and speak, they are individuals who are doing incredible work.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe some of them have like gone a bit like off the STEM field, but they still use like the tools and the skills that they learned to like showcase their resources and stuff. So I 100% agree with you. Like with universities or institutions as a whole, it's like that initiative. And even I like to, again, like a second point I'd say is like, as you mentioned, it's like that intentionality. Because like the episode, I don't know when it will be out, hopefully soon, but like I mentioned in a previous episode that like the biggest thing that I've always found with like especially when it comes to like award ceremonies to support, like to celebrate like business founders, is sometimes there's an accessibility issue in the sense of like price. So even I'd like mention like on a personal level, like myself, I was nominated for 2 different awards that were based in Birmingham, and I was like, this is great, I've been nominated, but I don't have to pay for my own ticket, which is great. But then they were just like, oh yeah, so if you want to bring anyone, it will cost you like, I don't know, like 140 to something else. And I was like, okay, it's also not in the UK. Not in the UK, it's not in London. So then I'm going to also have to pay for like train tickets if I want to go there. And then it's an evening event, so I'm going to have to pay for a hotel. And like, even like I was talking to someone else through work who also was like, well, like he was talking, like funnily enough, when I like my first year working here, we both were nominated for different awards, but both at the same award ceremony. And we were just like, so since then he's always like, oh, I see you like applying for awards and stuff, like, and we always talk about it. But we were talking about it, and he said like, oh, like, you know, are you going to go? And I was like, well, it's a great opportunity, and I really appreciate like being shortlisted. But I was like, finance-wise, like, I don't want to pay a lot of money for something that I may or may not win. Because I was like, if it's in London, like, it's not the end of the world. Like, at most, I can just get an Uber home, and it's not going to be as expensive as, like, if I had to pay for a hotel as well. So I think for me, it was, like, one of the things that I said, like, long-term goal, or, like, you know, pick up the mic, like, got millions tomorrow. Like, one of the things I would be almost like a, I don't know, I don't want to say support fund, but like a fund that like, oh, okay, if you are shortlisted for an award or you're nominated for an award, and you want to, like you've been shortlisted, you can't finance yourself to go, like just put in an application, we'll review it, and we'll give you the money to like go and enjoy yourself. So you're not like, it's not coming out of your own pocket and stuff like that. And even arguably like, so a friend of mine, she was doing an event yesterday, and she was doing an exhibition of like her work and stuff, and I was like, this is incredible. She was like, yeah, I'd love to do this more often, but it's just like a finance thing because I have to rent the room and do all of this and do all of that. And even I was thinking like, why isn't there like a fund that like, because I was just like, even like regardless of her being my friend, like I was just like, it should be like, if someone's just like, hey, I want to put on an art exhibition and like that you can see my portfolio or my work. I was like, why can't someone just like be like, here, you know what, here's like, if you need like hundreds of pounds to like put on an exhibition, even if it's just like the venue cost, which usually is like the most, like the highest cost for the event. It's like even just to do that. So I agree with you that it's that like intentionality of like institutions to say like, okay, if we're going to be a program that supports young people, like let's make sure we're actually supporting young people. So if we're offering them like free space to work, we should also bear in mind that like, maybe if we can, we should also include in our budgets a travel bursary for people who might need it. Or even just a bursary in general, because our memberships we might be working with, like our memberships might not be too expensive, but there might be certain people who can't afford some of the prices that we offer. Or it might even be a case of, actually, you know what, we might not be able to do that, but you know, we know that they host events for their business, so we'll give them the option to host events, and they'll be able to do ticketed events, so they can like at least make an income from the events they're hosting, and we'll cover the cost of the bar and the venue and stuff like that. So yeah, it's like that, like you said, like that intentionality when it comes to businesses or like institutions is what's really needed.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, that's the best thing. I love the idea of the bursary. Just having that as, because people want to develop and grow. It's just a lot of the time it's just lack.
100%.
And it's like, so how can you get into particular spaces if you don't have what you need to get into those spaces?
100%.
I think that's why certain people in certain groups flourish, because they have, it might be financial, but just they have the connections or they know the people. They have the network or the capacity to do what they need to do, which makes it difficult for the rest of us to get into those spaces.
No, 100%. And it's even like you said, like with the financial aspect. So I know I don't know the stat off the top of my head, but I know even with funding, like that's the biggest thing. And even arguably like the partner of the program, Akil, like that's one of the things he says when it comes to like why does this program exist and like why, for example, like this program there isn't a cost associated with it. Because he said like when it comes to funding, like black founders are one of the, at least in the UK, are of all sort of like groups is the least that gets funding. And he said that like when it also depends on like if the creative industries as a whole essentially doesn't have that much money compared to other industries. So he's saying like if you're already in an industry that doesn't get a lot of like financial funding, and then you're also including things like maybe you're a black founder, or maybe you're a founder of color, but then also you're a female founder, and then when those like demographics cross over, so you're now a black female founder. And he even said like, you know, we look at things like this I definitely know this, don't know the stats on, but he said like look at like neurodiversity. So he was saying like some funding application forms, do they take into account that like some people doing it will be neurodiverse? So their answers might not be like literally typing into a form might not be the best way for them to do it. They might be best to like literally just do voice notes or video, literally like recording themselves answering rather than like typing stuff out. Have they like, do people who offer funding give like a support worker that could like support people who are neurodiverse with their funding applications, or like even if they can't do any of that, like recommend free software that could help them. So like one that like I know members of the co-working space uses like Otter AI. So they were just like, it does transcripts. So sometimes what they'll do is they'll like record them, they'll basically use it to record a meeting, and maybe they'll ask themselves, like they'll read out their answers to the questions, they'll look at the transcript, and then they'll just be like, okay, I'll just rewrite this transcript and then use that as my answer for the question. But yeah, he was saying like, you know, like essentially it's like when these factors then start to overlap, that's when like you need to almost like understand that like there is already like a boundary or two like funding, but now you've got other things, and even arguably like people say like sometimes it's also like an industry thing. So whether it's your industry maybe isn't seen as like that important, or like specific, not like broader industry of like creative industries, but like even within the creative industries, like if you are like, biggest thing now is like if you have tech or AI involved in whatever you do, like there's but like if you're if you're like a traditional, like for example, if you're a marketing agency, people might be like, there's loads of marketing agencies. Why do I need to give funding to your marketing agency? Right. Or if you're like specifically, I don't know, like for example, like people say with like Pick Up the Mic, like podcasts are abundantly, like there's a new podcast almost every week, if not every day. And like, so it's the same thing with that. So like we even with Pick Up the Mic, like it's like one of the things that I'm trying to like, I'm probably gonna have to like do a whole rebrand on this, but like I'm encouraging people to see us as not just like one podcast or even like a podcast network. I would now say we're now sort of moved to being like a multimedia company that does like different works to support people. But literally like it's the same thing. So I know sort of what you were talking about, your story of like people essentially like not grasping like what you're saying to them. So like for me, it was funny because like I won't name the person, but there was like I was in a room with like senior management at an organization. They were talking to me about Pick Up the Mic, and I was like, they were just like, oh, what do you do? And I was like talking about Pick Up the Mic, and I do this. And then like when I was describing it to them, they were just like, oh, it's okay, this is cool. And I was a bit like, I don't really know how you want me to respond. I was like, this is kind of awkward. And I was like, yeah, no, I like what I do. I enjoy it. It's great. And then what was really funny was because I don't know if this person remembers it, but then a year later, someone at the organization asked me to come back to like host their awards evening. Okay. And I like did it. I've always told people I love hosting. It's really fun. And then someone like almost directly under this person came up to me afterwards, and he was just like, oh, I don't know if you know, but like that person was like, wow, this host is really great. Like he's charismatic, he's fun, he's engaging, it's all of this. And he was just like, he was just loving every moment of what you're doing. I was like, that's really good to know. But yeah, afterwards, like afterwards I was like, I'm not expecting anything from it. And I was just like, and I think it's linking to what you're saying about like the work that people do. I think the biggest thing that I tell people, whether it's with like business or even career, like not everyone's going to understand what you do,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
not everyone's going to think the work that you're doing is important. You know, we've seen it on a global scale when it comes to like employability. We've seen it on a more societal scale when it comes to like housing and people saying no, like you should be able to afford a house in London, but yeah,
Buying?
but, do you see what I mean? And yeah, literally like people saying like there is that huge disconnect between like, yes, when you were like 20 years ago or 30 years ago, you could maybe do some of these things, but now you have to bear in mind that like situations have changed, like societal landscape has changed, and you need to be aware of those things. But I think for me, it's arguably like even with Pick Up the Mic, I say like, not everyone's going to understand what I do with Pick Up the Mic. Not everyone's going to think that it's the most important thing like to do or to fund or to support. But I'm like, at the end of the day, if the people that like get what Pick Up the Mic is, like get it, I'm happy. And if they need support, if they need help, I'm more than happy to do it. So with that case, like I haven't spoken to the person since. I wasn't upset by it, but I was like, look, like at the end of the day, that person's not my target audience. He's not the person that I need to benefit from what I'm doing. Like the other people in the room are. And I guess arguably, like to circle back to it, the graduation speech, like it was the same thing. So even with my speech, I was just like, look, I don't want to like, and I'm not criticizing anyone who does this, but like for me personally, I was like, I don't want to talk about my own specific journey at Brunel, and I don't want to necessarily focus on like all the academics and the amazing support, or even saying like the university was amazing, all of this stuff. I was like, no, like I want to focus on students in the room, because ultimately like they're the people that essentially need to hear this the most, because I was just like, the speech is arguably like the speech, in my opinion, should be a sort of like reminder of why we're all here. It's a celebration of like all of these students who are graduating. And I was like, yeah, like I'm gonna just focus on them. And like, I was just like, if, you know, the people like I think our chancellor, was it our chancellor? Like, there were loads of like high up people in my university on stage. And I was like, if afterwards they turn around and they're just like, you know what? We weren't really happy with this. I was like, at the end of the day, like I've graduated. It's done now. But what was really interesting was, Leslie was in the audience. She was watching. So she was watching my speech, and she said, I don't remember what this person's position is, but someone senior up in my university, and he was the one like who was delivering. Like he's the mate. Like I don't think he's the chancellor, but he was like high up in the university. He apparently was like loving my jokes, and like I was making like all kinds of jokes. I was like, I made a joke like, oh, like I face, you know, university was good, but I face hardships and difficulties and all of this. And I made a joke and I was like, but you know, enough about my relationships. Let's like get back to what we were talking about. And yeah, she was saying like, I don't know if you know, like he was cracking up and loving your speech. I was like, couldn't hear anything. To me, I was like, if I'm just trying to read the words, not muck up and not drop anything. But yeah, she was just like, yeah, it's really good. And I think to me, that almost like symbolizes when you focus, like you'll be surprised when if you're like with the work that you do. So I guess like with a business, if you focus on your target audience, you might be thinking, oh, actually, I shouldn't be focused on strengthening my community with my target audience. I should be focusing on my relationship with potential partners or funders or supporters and all of that. But what I've realized through that, but also through like speaking to other people in their journeys, is when you focus on your community and having like a good sense of community, a strong sense of community, arguably people will be like, yeah, like we love what you do, because not just because like you've got great stats, you've got great statistics, all of this stuff, but it's like I can actually see like you as an individual have like, you get the people that you're trying to support. Like you understand them, you support them, and through the work that you're doing, you're really like creating this inclusive space. So that would be my like message to summarize that whole segment. Is this literally like understand that like when you focus on your audience, or specifically your target audience, whether you're a business founder or even if it's like career-wise, when you focus on making their experience amazing, that's when like other people will be like, oh, like I love what you do, like, do you want to get paid for it to do it, or do you want to like partner up with us to do it? Or actually, hey, we love what you do. We'd love for you to come and speak at our organization because you're doing incredible work. So it's through those like small things and understanding your group, in my opinion, that's what allows you to like get these other opportunities that you might be thinking like other people, just because of their like social media following and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen. It does happen. But like the reason why people like those organizations like do well, like the biggest example I'd say like is it's also funny. Sorry, I completely forgot to say this before. It's funny that you mentioned musical theatre, because like these guys probably don't know, but like I did drama for GCSE and A-level.
Okay, fair.
Because
And A-level,
and funnily enough, Hairspray was one of the school plays that we did.
Oh, dream. I would have loved that.
Hairspray, we did Bugsy Malone, we did The Wiz, we did there was like a modern retelling of like Alice in Wonderland, we did that. Funnily enough, this I've never said, but so my school was gonna do, was it before The Wiz? There was one, basically, so the reason we ended up doing Alice in Wonderland was because basically we were going to do Annie. And they had so they did like a casting call, like people auditioned, people were like being like signed up for they had their roles assigned, hadn't started rehearsing. Then they like called everyone after school one day and they were just like, so just to let you guys know, we can't do Annie anymore.
Okay.
The reason being was, so at that time, Jay-Z had bought the rights to do the Annie film.
Okay.
And that then meant that the price of I think with school plays you basically have to pay the organisation who owns. I don't know if it's free.
I've never thought that far.
That's what I was thinking. I don't know. I might be wrong on this. So if I am, please let me know. But I think you have to either pay or your school can subscribe to get it. And essentially because he was producing that film, he'd bought up the rights, and that meant that the price was a lot more expensive. Yeah. So they were just it would have been great, but we're gonna
But also, it was all about little girls. So where were the boys gonna
it was
it was girls, orphan kids.
I think
not orphan girls.
Yeah. But yeah, literally with that, it was literally they because I think I was gonna play. So I was going to play the uncle, in the film. And they were just sorry guys.
Too expensive.
Too expensive. So they were like, we're going to do something instead. Which ended up being, but I love doing theatre. And I tell people today, even though I didn't stick and study, I didn't become an actor or stuff like that. I say that even biggest thing I tell people is improvisation is where I live and where I love. So usually when I do speech, that speech, I generally had to write because they were just we need to see what you're talking about. But most of the time, if people ask me to do a speech or do workshops, I never have I have notes, but I never have a strict thing that I need to stick to because I like the improvisation and the flow of the conversation. And to me personally, it makes every workshop that I do, for example, I do a networking workshop of how do you network or how do you essentially get paid opportunities, meet new people, all of this stuff. But every time I've done it, there's always been a bit of a difference to it. So someone might say I joke about one time, if I'll be surprised if you're watching, Stormzy, if you're watching, that'd be great. But I took the first time I ever did it, I was at work and I told people because they were just how do you message big people in industry? And I said just message. I said I DM'd Stormzy on Instagram once to come to a thing the Nigerian Society were doing with the Ghanaian Society. Nice. Did he reply to my DM? No.
That's okay.
But I was just it's cool. I can at least say I DM'd him. Or there have been another example, certain athletes or comedians, I've been I'd love to get you on the podcast. And sometimes biggest example was Trevor Noah. I found I found his mom. I was just I love what you do. Because my biggest dream, and people, if you watch this, I have said Trevor Noah is one of my dream guests, but I've also said when he was hosting the Daily Show, it was also a bit sad when he left, but I was just my thing I would love to just be invited on the Daily Show to discuss, pick up the mic, and the work that I was doing with pick up the mic. Okay. I don't think I heard back from his agent, but I was genuinely just
Instagram?
I might have to DM him. He's got a podcast show on
he does
Spotify.
Now.
So I might have to hit you up, Trevor.
Just spam him. Spam his email.
But I tell people it's literally that. With the workshops, those individual conversations. Because even after the session, someone was just how did that? How did you get the confidence to do that? And another one I did, people were talking about how do you utilize LinkedIn as a platform to network with people? But I've said each time I've done this session, it's always been different, and it's through. And I'm not saying if you want to do workshops or be a facilitator or even a host, you have to improvise. Yeah. But I've told people it's all about just being open to the possibility of improvisation. And and that's why I say with the podcast, yes, we have questions that we ask and that's great. But sometimes I just let the conversations go because I'm this is really good. I'm not going to divert it back because I'm actually going on a tangent. I'm it's a conversation. Workshops, to me personally, are best when they're conversations. And I guess the final point to say is even arguably I have a mentee, and that's one of the things that I've liked about mentoring her is the sessions that we do. do have like specific things that they're supposed to cover, but I've liked that like it's not rigid. So even for me, I've told like, actually I don't know if I've told her this, but I've said like, when the person who runs the program was asking me questions, I said like, well, actually, the thing I've really loved is she's actually made me think about my career. Right. So she's asking me questions about like, what's next, or like, what do you like? Do you enjoy your like? I think the question threw me off. And she was just like, how do you enjoy your 9 to 5? Because like, not all the time you're doing fun stuff. Like sometimes you might be doing boring things. And I remember I just started laughing. And I was just like, oh, like I can give you advice, but like, just take it or leave it. But I think with that, it's like, that's what I like even about like sometimes not having like rigid structures to stuff. It allows that like that flow of like creativity to come in and influence your work. And like I said, with the workshops, everyone's been different. The feedback's always been good, but it's nice to see like what I could maybe focus on for other ones to be like, oh, actually, you know, this was something that was highlighted that people said they were really interested in. I'm going to actually make sure maybe I'll focus on this a bit more for the next one that I do.
Right.
And yeah, that's to me is like a huge benefit.
No, I love that. Love
Perfect.
that. Yes.
Now we're going to go on to passing the mic. So let me know the question or questions you would like to ask me.
Oh, well, when you asked me this before we started filming, I was like, I don't want to be the person that asks you what everyone else has asked. I want to be original. Okay, first thing that came to my mind was, what was your dream job when you were, say, 5? Like, what did you think life was going to look like for you?
Like you, it's changed throughout my whole journey. Yeah. When I was 5, I don't really know, you know. Like, so they had like a careers thing at my primary school, and I know my parents like loved this picture of me because it was someone was at my primary school was a lawyer, so he brought his like wig and like gown in and like let everyone like try it on. So there's like a picture, if I can find it, I'll put it on the screen, but there's like a picture of me in like full like lawyer robes. I didn't ever think I would be a lawyer, but I think maybe at 5, and it sort of like stuck for a while, was I definitely wanted to maybe go into politics. Then like I think maybe when I was like, and it's funny because one of my closest friends, and like he's actually one of the people that helped me to Pick Up the Mic to Life, Samuel, he also had a similar thing of like wanting to be a politician. And then it's funny because around the same age for both of us, we were just like, I think it was just when you're older, you see like politics is not as like clear cut and is not as easy as people, like it's made to seem when you're a lot younger. Yeah. And I was just like, even if you know like, essentially you have this amazing idea or you want to support people, your hands are sometimes tied. And I've even said like, if you ever want to get into politics and you want to sort of do like almost like a test run, either if you're a current student, I would say like be a part of your student union, work in your student union, see how that goes. Because a lot of like, I think like from people that worked at student unions that we've worked with, like they always say that like students come in, they're usually there for a year, they can reapply to be there for the following year, but they come in with like big ideas of like how they're going to change up the union and like fix the student experience. And then they realize like, 3 months in, no, like the university or the union has certain things that they can and can't do. And even if they want to change things long term, it's it's a slow moving conversation. So I think to me it was the same thing. Like I said, I'm going back to reading, but I used to read a lot when I was younger, and I'd read a lot of like science fiction, and I read a book that was all about, that had like cloning involved, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. It's like, cool, I'm either going to go into, what's it called? Either bioengineer, or I was going to go into nanotechnology, because as I mentioned, or as you guys may know, I'm a massive comic book fan, so I was just like, also the way that the nanotechnology could be used, like whether it's with like health or even just like for protection gear and all this stuff, I was like, it could be really cool. Yeah. Then I realized during my GCSEs, I actually don't like biology and chemistry. So
well, that's what you really need.
So I was just like, you know, that puts like that pauses that conversation. Yeah. But I really like physics, and even as you mentioned before, like I'm like a physics nerd as well. So like I watch stuff on like space and like quantum theory and like quantum physics and all of this stuff. Like even like I remember for A-levels, like I said, exam was rough, but like I loved learning about it. And there was this whole thing on like quantum physics of like, is light a wave or is it a particle? And there was this whole so there was a whole
question.
So there's a whole experiment on like, so basically light was emitted it was basically, so they had a sensor and light was emitted to it, and then they would read it. And then they said they would put like a slit to basically divide the light and see how it would act. Because if it didn't go through the slit, then it must be a particle. And if it did go through the slit, it must be a wave because it's just still bouncing through. Then it just got really, I don't remember what the experiment's called, but it gets really trippy because essentially when the experiment was observed, light would act differently to when it wasn't directly yeah, I can tell you why. So like they would try different slits and the light basically would act really different ways. So for a long time, they were just like, well, is it a wave or is it a particle? Because if everything like that exists is either made up of particles or, you know, it's essentially along the electromagnetic spectrum, it was like, it must be one of the two. Essentially, light acts both ways and has similarities between the two. And I remember learning about that and I was just like, this is really why is it? So this started like a whole spiral. Physics was potentially something I was thinking about. But then my physics teacher actually was like really big. So he studied, I think, either environmental science or geography at uni. And he would focus on like sustainability and like all of that stuff. And I remember like, again, this is like all the way back in GCSE, he spoke about this really cool, so Japan was taking on a lot of nuclear waste at the time because they wanted to see how to make, so essentially nuclear waste is renewable. No, it's sustainable because it produces a lot of energy long term, but it's not renewable. It's not a renewable source of energy because the waste basically has to be buried because it's like nuclear, it's radioactive, and it has to be buried like deep down and can't be used again for anything. But he was saying like in Japan, they were researching to how to like make it a renewable energy source. So to use the waste as like another form of energy. So it's almost like rather than having to like bury it away and then keep it locked up, you can like keep fueling that process. So it's like, actually no, energy, like nuclear energy is now being made to be renewable and sustainable. And he was just like, Japan are looking to make it like an alternative source to fossil fuels because of the impact fossil fuels has on the environment. And I remember hearing that and I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like I would love to actually like know more about this. So that's when I ended up doing like environmental science. And then at uni, I did it for my undergraduate. And then during my degree, I realized I don't want to work in the lab.
You and me both.
Like the first year we had lab work and I was just like, yeah, you know what, after this, I'm done. But instead I love the community aspect. So I said like, I think I basically came up with, and arguably that's what I do now, is the area of work I want to be in is like communicating, with the environment, is communicating like environmental issues to the general public. So like one of my lecturer's like modules, he specifically asked everyone to like come up with a video discussing an environmental topic, and you basically had to not dumb down, but like explain environmental issue to the general public. Because he said, as scientists, we use a lot of words, phrases, we discuss stuff. So even like he was saying, like everyone talks about global temperature can't increase by a certain number of degrees. If it does, it's going to impact the environment. There's going to be like permanent damage, all of this stuff. But he said like, do any of you in the room even know what like the global temperature of the world is? Like, and then everyone was just like, actually, I don't know. Like some people were just like, well, is it room temperature? Because everyone, like room temperature is used for everything. And then like, I think he looked it up and it was just like, it was 30, like this was at the time. I don't know if it's the same now.
Oh, probably not.
But it was just like 13 to 14 degrees is like what global temperature is. And he was just like, yeah, even that, like we're talking about the increase in temperature, but we're not explaining to people like what it is, because people might be like, oh, actually like global temperature increasing for my area isn't going to be too bad or impact me. Or even he was saying like flooding. So there's this thing, I think it's called the Thames 100. So it looks at essentially like how the Thames, like if sea levels rise, is going to impact like different places. Biggest example for anyone in London is essentially the House of Parliament flooded. But yeah, so he was talking about like how global temperatures, like essentially like with the Thames 100, is going to impact the rest of like London and different places. But he said like, that's not explained to people, and it's not really spoken and communicated to them well. So the biggest thing like I learned from that was, how do we communicate environmental issues in a way that it's not like judging, it's not saying like, you need to do this or the planet's gonna burn, but it's also understanding like, how do you tackle other things? So based on these conversations, you can like, a big example is climate anxiety is a thing that, especially for a lot of young people, exists because they're hearing that like, oh yeah, like, the world temperature is increasing, like things are bad, and they're getting anxiety because they're like, oh, well, am I even gonna, like, when I'm older, especially for like young children, like especially primary school to like early secondary, they're like, well, when I'm an adult, am I even gonna have a world to live in? Like, what's it gonna look like? Am I even gonna be able to have like a family, like stuff like this? So essentially, like, that's how my career path has like changed, like since primary school to essentially now.
Wow.
All over the place, but it's been fun.
I like that, because life is not linear. I think a lot of us, at least for me, I had this idea when you're younger, it's like, I'm going to do this by this age and do this, and then life happens, you're like, I'm just figuring this out. you may wake up and you want to be an astronaut, and then tomorrow you're like, I want to be prime minister. So, and it's fine. I think it's important, like, even sharing that, because my path is not linear at all. And I think just accepting that, like, life happens and your needs, and you find out what you like and what you don't like, and what works for you and where you want to be. That's just what life is.
100%.
So I love that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Or...
Oh, I didn't think of any other. I thought it was just one.
No.
I was like, I'm really thinking about this one question. Let's not get too philosophical. Where do you... Oh, no, that's boring. I want to be interested. What is an experience that you've had that has taught you the most important lesson?
Ooh. I don't think I've been asked that before.
Oh, excellent. I'm loving this,
Experience I've had that's taught me a really important lesson. I think for this one, I'm going to have to do my classic top three. I think one was actually one that my sister reminded me yesterday, which was my mum says this thing of like, it's better to be late than late. It's the idea of like, essentially, it's better for you to like she was talking about like if you're running late and you're like rushing, that can lead to you almost like, getting injured or things like that. And she was like, it's better for you to just arrive somewhere late than to like arrive and it's like, you're almost there, something happens, now you're injured, or like now, I don't know, you've now realized you've left your wallet on the train, so now you'll have to worrying about all of this stuff. So she was saying sometimes it's better to just arrive late and know that like you've got everything you need and like apologize than like to just arrive late. I think the second one would be understand, like, I think it's through just like, I say through my friends and family, like understanding that like, essentially like with Pickup and like, I don't have, like, just because there's maybe a difference between where I'm envision it being or like all the stuff I want to do for it versus where I am now doesn't necessarily mean, and I guess linked to the imposter syndrome, like, doesn't mean that it's like not doing the work that it's supposed to be doing. And understanding that like, sometimes it's just, maybe it could be a financial thing, but it's all about like, just keep the idea and wait for it to like grow and develop. And then I think my final lesson, I think my final lesson would both be linking to the quote on the back of the t-shirt, Sig Parvis Magna, but also I think through like all the conversations that I've had through this, and like even just generally talking to friends and family, is like understanding that like the importance of loving your small beginnings and being like, just because things may not be where you want them to be, or just because like you applied for something and you didn't get it, doesn't mean that like that's the end of the story. And in the interest of time, I'll say it super quickly, but there was like a funding competition at my university that I applied for. The first year I applied, I got past the first stage, didn't get past the second stage. Second time I applied, got to the final, didn't win the money. And then the third time, like I was thinking of maybe possibly applying, and then before the application deadline, the university team that manages this like competition got in touch with me and said, "Oh, we'd love for you to judge it." And I was like, oh, "Okay, cool." Like I was gonna apply, but I'm more than happy to just do the judging instead. Right. And like I told people in the room, and even like afterwards when they asked me to like talk about my journey and stuff like that, like I tell people like, "Oh, like this was a competition that I applied for, like didn't get the funding, but I came back as a judge, and to me, from that last application to where we are now, like my business has grown and so have I." So it's about like understanding that just because your beginnings may be small or things may not work out, that doesn't mean that like greatness can't come from it. And it's just about being consistent, understanding like you can take breaks from stuff and you can like persevere through things. Like you never know what the future will hold. So, yeah.
I love that last one. No, that's great.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We're now going to go to our MC of the month. Similar to some previous episodes, we have two. So the two that we've got is Girls in Science, which is a UNESCO UK initiative. So for anyone who doesn't know, it's essentially, I'll just get my notes up. It was designed to bridge the gender gap in STEM by empowering young women and girls globally to pursue scientific careers. And this looks like in different ways. So they specifically work with a lot of like local organizations who encourage girls to get into STEM. They have role models as well. They focus on like leadership and inclusivity. So yeah, definitely would recommend them to check them out because they're essentially empowering the the next generation, of women in STEM. And then finally, another one that's personal to home is they were a guest on one of our podcasts on this YouTube channel, is the Women in STEM podcast that's run by Kelly. She essentially interviews different women within the field of STEM, but also she supports like interviews like men to see how they can like advocate for women in STEM as well, and shares incredible stuff about their journey. But yes, check out those organizations. They're doing incredible work. Before we wrap up, we have the takeaway segment. So we've spoken about a lot. It has been a long conversation, but a great conversation. What should our audience take home with them today?
Oh my gosh, you covered so much. I'm trying to find. I'd definitely say just that in life, you have choices in life. What I was touching on sort of like towards the beginning of the conversation. Life is all about choices. And I hate to be that person who's like, it's up to you, but it really is up to you.
100%.
Like what you choose to do with your life and the choices that you make now will have a ripple effect on everything, whether that's you feeling like there's not enough representation, do something about it. If you want to be in a leadership position, do something about it. Put yourself in spaces. So I think just to tie everything in together, I mean, we've talked about representation to imposter syndrome and just like inclusivity. Make a choice about where you want your life to be or what it is that you want to see in your community, and then go out and do something about it. Yeah, I don't want to promote Nike, but like, just do it.
No, 100%. And
that's my key takeaway.
And I think that's a perfect way to end the episode. And if, like I said, this ends up being the last episode of the season, it's a perfect way to end the season as well. But yes, thank you to your wonderful audience for coming back for another episode. If you like this episode, like, comment, subscribe is always appreciated and much loved. If you want to make sure you don't miss any other episodes of the Student Guide or any of the other content on the Pick Up the Mic YouTube channel, then make sure you click the notification bell at the bottom of the video. If you want to receive some cool merch, receive discounts on some cool merch, like the one I'm wearing, or if you would like to get early access to our episodes, I'm actually working on developing some stuff for our Patreon community, then make sure you either subscribe to Patreon or YouTube channel membership. Both links are down below. And finally, if you want to check out other channels, as I always mention, we have 3 incredible channels outside of the stuff we do on the Pick Up the Mic YouTube channel. So that's our sci-fi and fantasy one, the 2 Maesters, that is our gaming one, Pick Up the Controller, and that is our anime one, Senseis of Anime. And you'll see a nice video that pops up that shows you where it is on our YouTube channel, how you can find out about them. Click subscribe, check out those channels, click the notification bells on them, and if you're interested in any of those subjects, you'll also be notified when we get new episodes or content out. We're going to wrap things up there, close this chapter of the Student Guide, and we'll see you all either in the next episode or, if I plan this right, the next season. But that's a bye from us here. Have a wonderful day and speak to you all soon.